something enormous has happened, absolutely enormous. I would say a once-in-a-century event. Secondly, it is not business as usual. We are never going to go back, and Shane was saying this, and I agree with everything he said. We're not going to be going back to where we were before because we can't. And we don't want to either. But the other point is that there is an alternative to the present system. We desperately need another system, and that is what I'm going to talk about. First of all, I'm going to spell out first of all what neoliberalism is, why it is, in my view, a thoroughly despicable system, why it collapsed, and lastly, how do we replace it, and what would an alternative system look like? So first of all, let's start off with the question, what is neoliberalism? Neoliberalism is the state of capitalism which, thanks to Thatcher in Britain and Reagan in the United States, replaced the managed capitalism, as it's often called, in the period after the Second World War, when because of Reconstruction, because of all the destruction which had occurred worldwide, there was an enormous market for capitalism, and for 20, 30 years it appeared to be going very well. Then we had the 1970s, and then we had the 1980s, and something very fundamental happened. Neoliberalism was born, and what replaced managed capitalism was what is called market fundamentalism. Now, I don't want to keep on using these phrases because most people I know are not familiar with them, but what market fundamentalism means is that it is the belief that whatever you're talking about, whether it's government, business, finance, organization of society, the way to do it is by allowing the market to let rip. Let government get out of the way and let market forces dominate. And why? Because that is how you get the most efficient solution. That's the dominant ideology at the present time. It's also totally wrong, as I should go on to say. Secondly, it means, which is extremely dangerous, but which has happened, the dismantling of financial regulation. Capitalism is a pretty dangerous animal in the first place, but as someone said, what neoliberalism means is that you've made the car more aerodynamic, and then you've removed the brake pedal. The fact is, you have removed all the regulation which is going to control the excesses of the market when a financial frenzy and a bubble builds up. That happened big time with Mrs. Thatcher's Big Bang in 1986, and the removal of all sorts of controls, including exchange controls, so that money could flow across the world without restriction. Thirdly, neoliberalism means the shrinking of the state, something which the present coalition government, we're going to hear a lot more about this, but let's be honest about this. It happened under Labour, New Labour, not my party, New Labour happened before I joined the Labour Party, not New Labour. You'll find that's pretty clear from everything I'm going to say. And the state has been shrunk by putting out more and more of its operations to be done privately, and particularly through privatisation of industry, which Thatcher did, and what New Labour tried to do, privatisation of public services. They didn't altogether succeed, but they certainly tried. Fourthly, it means the deregulation of business, freeing up business, so that they have control over their corporate empires with minimum restrictions and minimum regulation, and of course at the same time combined with very close restrictions on the trade unions. Blair said in 1997, I think, invest in Britain because you had the tightest regulation of trade unions anywhere in the Western world. So power to the corporates, to the elites, and keep everyone else on a very short leash. It also means, neoliberalism, a disregard, and this is where we come back to what Shane was saying so eloquently, a disregard, even a hostility to anything that got in the way of their values, their beliefs, and the building up of capitalist value. And capitalist value was all about wealth maximization. That's why in our society, I think we have beliefs and values at the present time which are seriously distorted. It's all about celebrity, money, bling. It's all about wealth maximization. I'm not against wealth, as long as it's properly distributed, but the concentration and focus on this to the exclusion of other values, particularly green values, particularly altruism, concern for others in society, building a fair society and a balanced society, all of that's gone out of the window. It's wealth maximization. That's neoliberalism. Capitalism taking the brakes off. And I would just add one other aspect of this, which I think is very important. That is, of course, internationally, it's frequently when you say we are not an island. Well, of course, we do happen to be an island, but what that means by this, we are part, of course, of a wider system, both in Europe, of the Western world, and of course of the international economy. And what neoliberalism has done is to ensure that all the developing countries are forced to be part of that system as contributors to it, as primary producers, in order that we can rake off the more profitable part of processing and of distribution and selling at the top end of the market. So they also have been mobilized to support the wealth of the corporate elite in the West. That's what neoliberalism is really fundamentally about. Now, I've probably said enough to answer my second question, which is, well, is it such a bad system if it's maximised wealth? And you'll hear many people say, many of our opponents who say, capitalism is the most successful economic system in the history of the world in generating wealth. Well, there is another side to it as well, and I want to talk about that. And I'm going to return to this question of wealth creation in a moment. First of all, it has fundamentally monopolized power and wealth in the hands of the elite. We are the most unequal, unbalanced society in this country and in the West of any society probably for the last 100 years. And of course, what do tiny elites do? They take advantage of their power. Their whole concentration is on expanding their own power and making sure that others are kept subordinate to that objective. They have deregulated the financial sector, and of course it was precisely that which is one of the main reasons why we went into the financial crash and the very near global economic meltdown, because they used their power to maximize their wealth in a way which broke all the rules of economic control and fair balance. Thirdly, it generated unheard of inequality. I don't know, what would you say was the balance between, in a major company, any of the top 100 companies, the top 100 FTSE companies, between the lowest paid person and the chief executive in terms of pay? What would you say the balance was?
1 to 100.
Good start. Push it up a bit. Well, you're not far off. The answer is, at the present time, and it's going up, 400 to 1. In America, it is 1,000 to 1. No, I can give you all the figures afterwards. It is absolutely staggering, and I think people, again, don't realise this. The wealthy like to use their wealth privately, in the tax havens, in all the spots around the world where they will buy their privacy and keep everyone else out. They'll have their yachts, they'll have their planes, they'll have their submarines, they'll have everything in order to ensure that they have the maximum enjoyment and wealth and the privacy that they want.